Hi guys, I wanted to show you a technique that has been on my mind for the flag quilts that you can use on regular quilts. I think looks great on a flag quilt. Flags generally don't have a border around them, which is what the binding ends up looking like. So I use a technique called binding facing to make it look borderless, which is basically you sew the binding onto the front and then flip it around and attach it to the back. Sewing machine, some binding, some extra fabric, iron, and some scissors and sewing clips. Okay, so we've got our quilt sandwiched, quilted, and trimmed down. Most of my projects are based off of 2.5-inch squares, so I got some extra 2.5-inch squares. Fold them wrong sides together to make little triangles, and pin them into the sides of your project, like so. So I've got all four corners pinned in. These are going to show up on the back, so if I was using a quilt that I wanted to snuggle, I would use fabric that would, seriously, because it's constantly going to show, I would use some fabric that would coordinate with my quilt. This is just going to go on the wall. Doesn't matter. So I've got all four corners clipped in. I use double fold binding, so you're going to cut 4 lengths of your binding. You're going to get 2 lengths to go on the top and 2 lengths to go on the side. You want it to be about 1/2 inch shorter than your quilt is. And you're going to open, for me, I use double fold binding, so I'm going to open that up and clip it right there. And you're going to do that for all 4 sides. There we go. Okay, all clipped in, plus I put a couple extra clips in there. You're going to take this over to your sewing machine, and you're going to sew all the way around the edge, about a scant 1/4 inch away from the edge. Amy, what's scant 1/4 inch? Scant 1/4 inch is a thread's width less than a 1/4 inch. So we're talking minuscule. So all the way around your project, the back of this thread is not going to show, so don't worry about the color. Okay, got that sewn. So everything's holding together now. Okay, next step, we're going to iron this all the way out. So we're going to be releasing that one crease that's on there. And first, take your scissors and trim off a tiny bit, not going over the lines you just stitched, but just on the outside of it to release that corner to make it a little less bulky. So when we go to poke it out, it'll stand up nice and straight. So do that to all 4 sides. And from here, we're going to go over to our iron. 1, 2, 3. Remember, don't go over the stitches that you just did. Okay, from here, go over to our iron. Not all flags need binding facing. I think the pride flag looks great with the stripy binding. So we're going to iron this all the way out to release that one fold, just the most inner crease that's there, so we can fold it over to the back. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, from here, start with the corners. Fold them, and gently, using a somewhat dull poking device, poke your corner out a bit. I'm using a dull color pencil. So there we go. We're going to do that to all 4 sides. Okay, all 4 sides have been turned over. Then when you flip it over, you'll see that the edges of the binding are now underneath that square. So I'm going to fold my binding under, and I'm going to fold this down until I can just start to see the front of my quilt come over, and mash that down with an iron. This is making it so it's pulling a tiny bit of the front of your quilt to the edge. So that way when you flip it over, all you see is the edge. You don't see your binding. Use an iron as you're going. Use clips as you're going. Okay, everything's ironed, everything's clipped over. Couple variations here. If this was going to be a quilt that I was going to snuggle, I would fold the binding over on itself, again, underneath to make it a smaller binding. Since this is just going up on the wall, I didn't do that extra fold, so you can see it right there. From here, you have a couple different options. If this is going to be a quilt that you're going to snuggle, you can do a hidden stitch, a ladder stitch along the back to secure that down. If your quilting can disguise it, if you were doing really just a whole bunch of straight line quilting, You could very easily do sew from the back and sew a line along here. It will show up on the front, so make sure you're doing a quilting pattern that can kind of disguise it. Or, and this is, I won't tell anybody, if this is something that's just going to go on the wall, you can just put a bead of glue on the back and nobody's going to know about it. Anyway, that's binding facing. I like it for flags. I like it for wall quilts. I've done it on a couple snuggle quilts. It just depends on what your project is. Thanks. Bye.